Hi, my name is Chastity Worthy, and I am presenting a PowerPoint with the group along with Michael, Lexi, and Austin. And our PowerPoint slide is titled Current Legal and Ethical Issues. There's two slides that I'll be presenting to you.
My name is Lexi Tisdale, and I'll be presenting on religion and public schools. Public school teachers are government employees. Therefore, we must remain neutral when it comes to factors of religion due to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which was created to keep the separation of church and state, meaning that the state nor federal government can enact just one set religion. As educators, we must remember that it's our duty to help foster an atmosphere of respect and equality for all of our students, even those of a different religion than us. These factors listed are important for teachers to be aware of based off of recent court cases and legal proceedings. So teachers must not lead or initiate prayer. This comes from the Engel versus Vitale lawsuit in 1962, which ruled that school-sponsored prayer directly violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Second, we see teachers are not allowed to initiate discussions regarding personal beliefs. Teachers should remain objective and only include religious discussions when it comes to educational purposes or when brought about by the student. Thirdly, we see teachers are not allowed to encourage students to include religious content in their assigned work. However, teachers can also not penalize or punish students for choosing to incorporate religious content, as that would be a violation of the student's First Amendment right. Lastly, we see that teachers must not require students to stand or recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It is a teacher's job to remain neutral and not endorse or oppose any religion to help keep that separation of church and state. Now let's take a look at some of students' rights. Students have more freedoms than teachers within the walls of the public education system. So we see that students are permitted to request a moment of silence during their morning procedures over the intercom. However, this cannot be instructed by a teacher or school administrator. We also see prayer is permitted when it is student initiated. If the student has planned it and decided that they're going to pray, then that's allowed. However, an administrator or teacher cannot tell a student or ask a student to pray. Thirdly, we see that students should not be discouraged from participating in religious activities. So this would mean clubs like First Priority or Fellowship of Christian Athletes is completely permissible. However, because we allow Christian organizations or Christian-based religions, we also have to allow for any religious club. We cannot oppose or discriminate based against an opposing or religion that differs from our own.
Hello, my name is Austin Waits, and today I'll briefly be discussing student rights in regards to freedom of expression. These first two bullet points here will coincide with each other a little bit. The First Amendment guarantees Americans a right to free speech and a right to express themselves, and this includes our students to a large degree. In the Tinker case, the Supreme Court affirmed that students were allowed to express themselves as long as it did not disrupt the educational environment. Students in this case were opposed to the cause of the Vietnam War, and they came to school wearing armbands to represent that. The school took issue with it, and it was ruled that it was the students' right to express themselves in this way, as it did not disrupt the educational environment. However, this freedom is not absolute. Schools do have the authority to regulate any speech that significantly disrupts school activities. For example, there was a student in the Bethel School District who spewed some lewd speech at an assembly on school property, and this was deemed to disrupt the school environment and contradict the school's educational mission. So that student was able to be removed. That was not protected by the First Amendment. To wrap it all up, students do enjoy a large amount of rights of freedom of expression, but these rights must be balanced against the school's duty to create a safe and welcoming environment for students to come and learn. Hello, let's talk briefly about students' rights in regards to search and seizure. The Fourth Amendment protects all Americans from unlawful or unreasonable search and seizure. Um, we as school officials, when we are searching somebody, first and foremost, need to be very careful that we put ourselves in a good environment to do so. If a female student is being searched, then there needs to be a female admin doing the searching, and there needs to be another female school employee there to witness and make sure that everything is above board. Same to be said for a male student. There needs to be a male teacher or a male administrator doing the search, and there needs to be a male employee there to witness the search. This is to protect the student and to protect the people doing the searching, just so everybody has a transparent process and everybody knows what happened. Now, why would you search somebody? When is it allowed to search somebody? It differs a little bit based on personal property or school property. If it's personal property, you have to have specific, reasonable suspicion of a person. It can't be a group of people. It can't be a room of people. You can't walk into a bathroom and say that there's 5 people in there and there was vape smoke, so I'm going to search all 5 of you guys. Somebody in that bathroom would have to say, I think Austin did it. Austin was in that stall vaping, and then you could search Austin. But you can't just search a whole group of people's personal property based on something that is vague or not specific to one person. Now, if it is on school property, a car in a parking lot, in a school parking spot, a locker perhaps, or something in a desk, those are things that, as an educator, we've got a little bit more leeway to search, but you still want to make sure that you've got people present to witness this search and that you've informed people that this search is happening so that the things you found are permissible. And it's always good to keep your SRO in the loop with any of this. Now, what is reasonable suspicion? Reasonable suspicion is information received from a reliable source, like another student that was there or a teacher. These are people that are considered reliable by school officials. And if you have a specific allegation or finger pointer, so to speak, about a thing or a person that when an act occurred, something happened, then that is reasonable suspicion. If you have, more than one thing, if a student comes up to you and has slurred speech and glassy eyes and is having problems keeping their balance, then that could be reasonable suspicion. But there have to be several things that indicate one person has a wrongdoing.
And the first one is due process. So due process and how it looks in the school setting is if a student or a teacher is accused of committing a crime, the individual is considered innocent until proven guilty. Public schools are considered state agencies, therefore the 14th Amendment applies to the operations of the public school. School officials must comply with the due process provisions of the U.S. Constitution, which is fundamental fairness in relationship to students and school personnel. Individuals accused of committing a crime have the right to fair proceedings and notifications of what is taking place, along with an opportunity to be heard before the school board officials.
Hello, we're going to talk briefly about the school's responsibility and liability in regards to student records. So, what are the purpose of educational records? The purpose of educational records are to give context and information to counselors, administrators, teachers, to give them more context or information about a student's life so that they can help serve them better, whether this is through IEPs, through counseling, etc. The biggest thing in regards to this is FERPA, or the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. This protects the confidentiality of student records. This makes sure that nobody other than your mom and dad, your family, are able to get this information about you because it could be used in a negative way. Things that are considered personal identifiable information are things like where you live, your telephone number, your academic test results, discipline measures that have been taken against you for any given incident, health records. These are all different things that are considered personally identifiable. So, the most common case that FERPA can be violated with probably is when somebody has had some sort of behavioral issue and it involved another student, and maybe the victim of this student's behavior, their parent calls and wants to know what you did to that student. And if you tell that parent exactly what you did to that student, then you're telling discipline measures of another student to somebody that is not in their family and not does not have a right to their personal information. So that would be a FERPA violation. That's something that we have to keep an eye on. Every year you have to tell your students and their parents about their rights and that they can amend or control the disclosure of their student records. This is often taken care of in student handbooks, but this is something that we've got to make sure that we tell them every year. If you are uncompliant with FERPA, then schools face loss of funding. This is a clear policy in regards to this subject, so it's pretty black and white. We just have to make sure that personally identifiable information is protected and that we always keep the family informed of any changes to those records.
And the second slide that I'm going to share with you is individuals with disabilities. So students with disabilities have the right to receive a free and appropriate public education tailored to their individual needs, and that's also considered FAPE. All teachers should be prepared to differentiate instruction and accommodate student needs based on their IEP. All students with disabilities have the right to be educated in the general education classroom with their non-disabled peers, also referred to their least restricted environment, at least 80% of the day, 80% of the school day. Teachers have the responsibility to observe and identify students in their classrooms who might need special accommodations to succeed in school. Teachers also must follow ethical procedures to refer students for evaluation to determine if they qualify for special education services. And they must not punish students with disabilities if the behavior is a direct result of their disability. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to be presenting on Alabama Educator Code of Ethics for the next few slides. The primary goal of every educator in the state of Alabama must be to provide an environment in which all students can learn. In order to accomplish that goal, every educator must value the worth and dignity of every person, both colleagues and students. They must have a devotion to excellence in all matters and must actively support the pursuit of knowledge. The Code of Ethics gives 9 standards listed for ethical behavior. Standard number 1 is professional conduct. An educator should demonstrate conduct that follows generally recognized professional standards, and that can include encouraging and supporting colleagues, respecting fellow educators, and participating in the development of a supportive teaching environment, or engaging in a variety of individual and collaborative learning experiences. Trustworthiness is standard 2, not listed here. An educator should exemplify honesty and integrity in the course of professional practice. Ethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, properly representing facts, advocating for fair and equitable opportunities for all children, and embodying characteristics of honesty, diplomacy, and fairness for your students. Standard number 3 is unlawful acts. An educator should abide by all federal, state, and local laws. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, the commission or conviction of a felony or any crime involving moral turpitude. And this can be a variety of different convictions where educators can find themselves in trouble, regardless of whether an appeal of the conviction has been sought or whether the first offender treatment is guilty. Standard number 4 is teacher-student relationship. An educator should always maintain a professional relationship with all students, both in and outside the classroom. Ethical behavior includes fulfilling the roles of a trusted mentor and advocate for students, nurturing the intellectual, physical, emotional, social, and civic potential of all students, providing an environment that does not needlessly expose students to unnecessary embarrassment, and creating and supporting and maintaining a learning environment for all students. I will see you on the next slide. Continuing with the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics, We continue with standard number 5, which is alcohol, drug, and tobacco use or possession. An educator should refrain from the use of alcohol and or tobacco during the course of professional practice and should never use illegal or unauthorized drugs. Ethical conduct includes factually representing the dangers of alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drug use and abuse to students during the course of professional practice. Unethical behavior would be being under the influence, possessing, or using or consuming illegal or unauthorized drug, or being on school premises or a school-related activity involving students while being under the influence or possessing alcoholic beverages or using tobacco. Standard number 6, public funds and property. An educator entrusted with public funds and property should honor that trust with a high level of honesty, accuracy, and responsibility. This includes maximizing the positive effects of school funds, modeling for students and colleagues the responsible use of public property, whereas unethical conduct would be misusing public or school-related funds, failing to account for funds, submitting fraudulent requests for reimbursement, or using school property without approval of the local Board of Education. And lastly, on this slide, we talk about remunerative conduct. An educator should maintain integrity with students, colleagues, parents, patrons, or businesses when accepting gifts, gratitudes, favors, and additional compensations. Ethical conduct would include ensuring that institutional privileges are not used for your personal gain, ensuring that school policies or procedures are not impacted by gifts or gratuities from any person or organization, whereas unethical conduct would include soliciting students or parents of students to purchase equipment, supplies, or any services from that educator, accepting gifts from vendors or potential vendors for personal use or gain, or tutoring students assigned to the educator for remunerative gain, right, unless approved by a local Board of Education. And I will continue with the last slide on slide 11. Lastly, regarding the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics, we have 2 more standards. Standard number 8 is the maintenance of confidentiality. An educator should comply with state and federal laws and local school board policies referring to confidentiality of student and personal records, standardized testing materials, and other information covered by confidentiality agreements. Ethical behavior would include keeping in confidence information about students that has been obtained in the course of professional service unless disclosure services purposes or is required by law, maintaining diligently the security of standardized test supplies and resources. So this includes for like ACT testing for FERPA reasons. You cannot be sharing any confidential information concerning students, student academic behavior, disciplinary records, any health or medical information, any family status, or any assessment results. Violating confidentiality agreements is another form of unethical conduct in relation to confidentiality, as well as violating confidentiality agreements required by state or local policy. And lastly, standard 9 is the abandonment of contract. An educator should fulfill all of the terms and obligations detailed in the contract with the local Board of Education or educational agency for the duration of their contract. Unethical behavior would include abandoning the contract for professional services without prior release from the contract or refusing to perform services required by the contract. Educators are required to report a breach of one or more of the standards in the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics no later than 60 days from the date the educator became aware of the alleged breach. And disciplinary action is defined as the issuance of a reprimand or warning, suspension, revocation, or denial of certificates. And I hope that you gained a little more insight on the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics.